Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Max 6 Entrepreneurial Center right here in Tempe, Arizona, where we help build businesses and connect you with the right people. This is a fantastic episode today because I have with us today the Max 6 team. These are my great friends Kyle McIntosh and Al Loveland. Kyle is the president and creative excitant. I've known that title for a while, but I always have a hard time using that term.
You're not alone.
I'm excited to hear what that means, even though I've heard it before. And Al, our new VP of Operations, or the mayor of Max 6, now official mayor.
Official mayor. And I guess that another term would be integrator. So that'd be the third term. And we can talk about that too.
We do need to talk about that.
Yes.
I just had that conversation with Dr. Babendor with SciTech Institute about the integrator role. So I'm looking forward to hearing how that fits for you and your new role with Max 6. So welcome to both of you to the studio. Al, is this the first time you have been in an interview in this location? Or because I know we've interviewed before upstairs in the other studio when we had that one.
I was actually here last month with Kelly Lorenzen for her show. Yes.
And a couple other people too. I can't recall who else was on. Good. Okay. So good. He's an old pro. You have been on in the studio or no yet?
I have with Darren from Tiger Mountain.
That's right. When you guys started the community garden.
Yes.
Okay. So now that we've all reacquainted ourselves, let's have you introduce yourselves to our listeners and our viewers. Kyle, would you start for yourself? And I know even before we went on air, our new producer, Jesse, you were giving him a little bit about the background about Max 6. This would be a great place to kind of introduce yourself and who Max 6 has been up until now. And then when Al joins us and introduce himself, we'll get to talk about where you're going.
Sure. So Kyle McIntosh, I'm the president and creative excitant of Max 6. And we started something in September 2011. Didn't know quite what it would be, but knew we wanted to work with companies, startup companies, all kinds of companies that we could help to grow, accomplish their goals in the world. And we knew that we wanted to work with companies that were doing things right by taking care of their people, including their external stakeholders. And so those two things came together in a number of different iterations over the years, business incubator, co-working space, real estate. And where we've kind of shaken it out and settled on for now is, we're a real estate company is sort of externally what everybody sees. We've got about 110,000 square feet of commercial space, some co-working, some traditional office space, but really what we do, we're not a real estate company, we're a people company. And so what we do day to day is stir the pot with all of these companies that are inside of Max 6 and inside these buildings to make connections, to find ways to help each other, and to really grow what has become a super cool community of, we're probably about 80 companies right now that they're thriving. And so our purpose is building better communities where people and businesses thrive. And that's what we work on every single day.
Great introduction. We can end the show right there. No, we can't, because you guys are up to some great things. Tell us about bringing Al on board, and then we'll have Al do a little bit of his background. But why the mayor?
Well, there's a reason he was called the mayor before we even started working with him. And so Al, it's funny, when I was sending something over for you on maybe the first day you started, and I pulled up your lease, and the day that we signed the lease, not the day that it started, was exactly 5 years to the day. Yeah. It was just a crazy coincidence. And Al has been a community member as a part of Max 6 for, most of that 5 years. And not just a community member sitting at a desk and doing his thing, but really being participatory in the community and helping others and getting to know Max 6 and what we do, and being an integral part of what is the experience of Max 6.
I won a lot of races.
I was just hearing the clicking of my heels upstairs on the second floor, and Al racing me to the door when the doorbell rang. You did, and you won every race.
That's right.
Yeah.
A year ago or so, I mean, I knew some of what Al did, but not the extent. And I knew that he was helping people like David Meehan and others. And just, I'd seen it, but didn't really have a full grasp of it. And I mean, between knowing we needed help, knowing a little bit enough about what Al did, and Chrissy grabbing me by the shirt and saying, you need to talk to Al, it really culminated in this initially a consulting relationship where he's been helping us more and more over the last number of months, really get our stuff together so that we can make sure that what we're doing is not just representative of it's great today, but can be duplicated and great tomorrow and at a greater scale. So how can we help more people? How can we affect more businesses positively? And so it got to the point where, okay, Al, I would love to work you out as a consultant, but I don't want you to be out. And so I want you on the team. I see the value of Al being able to really take what was this labor of love and turn it into something that is replicable as a business that we can take forward and really make some bigger stamp on the world. And
that's your one of many secret powers.
Yes. But to take my background was I graduated with a history degree.
That makes sense knowing you.
And that in 60 cents would get me a Coke at the time. Now with inflation, it's like at the $1.20 to get a Coke. But I worked at JP Morgan Chase for 15 years. And during that period of time, I developed a lot of skills. I started out as a temporary employee and worked my way up to be an AVP. And I had a group of about 90 people reporting into me. And then I was part of a layoff. And I started, I moved out here from Delaware to Arizona. And at a certain point, I was laid off. And I was like, what do I want to do? And I stayed here. And it took me about 9 months to figure it out. And I remember because I had my history degree, and when I was looking for work, I was always getting booted out because I didn't have a master's degree. So I went and I started a master's program. And I sat down, it was like an MBA or it was a master's in management. And I went back and I read the course loads, and I went with the master's in management because it had a lot of different things like cross-cultural communications, public relations versus your math classes. And so I started that the following Monday. And the first class was based around consulting. And I just read it and I just loved it. And from that point on, I started just basically myself here. And I had a couple iterations of what I did. My first company was 21 Days Consulting, and I worked with nonprofits and entrepreneurs. And I know how to network. So I went back in all the different the ecosystems here in the Valley. And then one day we're talking about Brian Stinson said, "Hey, let's meet over at this place called Max 6." And I Googled it. And it was literally across the street from where I lived.
Right before you moved.
And so I walked across here, and I
said for years.
And I went back and I started thinking about, okay, what am I going to do? And then I started to come in here, and it was a good period of time. And then of course the pandemic hit, and then the place was mine for about 3 months.
Well, yours and mine.
Yeah, it was.
We were the only two here.
Yeah, it was.
No doorbells ringing, no races.
No doorbells, no races. Nobody was here. And then at a certain point, I started working with the team, and I went back and I was like, because being a consultant, you go back and say, hey, we're done. And I went to Kyle and I said, we should have something a little bit more formal, because I don't want to come into you on Monday and say, hey, I'm going to be out of here when you're so knee deep and stuff. And then we went back, we had a conversation, and I'm here full time now.
This makes sense. So our first introduction wasn't necessarily Brian Stinson's core values meeting. You and I knew of you when you were at La Tip, right? Mm-hmm. All those years ago when Mike was in business.
Yes.
With his auto shop. Isn't that crazy? Because I said, I met this guy. He's like, Al, I know him. So yes. we go back a ways. And to extend what Kyle is saying about you, just again, for our listeners to understand really this ecosystem and how much we love on each other. Kyle and Al, and then Kendra as well, are the kind of people that when I was running the studio by myself, solo for the first 2 years, anytime someone was ringing the doorbell for the next show and I'm producing and hosting and I couldn't get out there by myself, you guys were the ones who were to make sure that hey, can I grab you coffee? Can I get you water? Sit down. She'll be right with you, without even having to ask anybody to do that for me, which is great. And just always a cheerleader for everything that we've done at Business RadioX and Conscious Capitalism. So, and for Max 6 as well. So this triad is a great example of how really everybody respects and loves on each other.
Regardless of my title, I'll be your maitre d' of Max 6 any day, Karen.
I appreciate it. And one of these days I'll learn how to say excitant. Yes.
Karen, I'll do everything except give you a hug.
For our viewers, we have this long-standing joke that Al's a little afraid of me. So one of these days, I'm going to corner him and hug him physically.
I'm just not a hugger, so
I'm going to make it happen. Yeah. We have COVID to thank for me having to learn how not to hug people. So there's that. I'm a little bit more resistant than I was pre-COVID. Okay. Anyway, let's talk a little bit more about what you're up to now. Kyle, you gave a great description of when you said we started something. I love that. Like, we started something. I didn't really know what it was. I get that. And I love that you said when you were, it only took you 9 months to figure out your something. I'm still figuring it out. So it takes some time, doesn't it?
I hope I never find out. I mean, it's always, you've got to know where you're going to some degree, but if you're not striving for doing something new and better, at least based on how the world's changing around you, then what are you doing?
Yep.
And they say life's about the journey, not the destination. So it's all about what you do, you learn, you grow, and you get better. And it's that's one of the fun things here every day, is that you're always meeting new people, and it's fun to help people grow.
And be willing to make mistakes along the way. I think that's the biggest hurdle I've had to get over for myself personally and professionally. I like doing things right. I like doing things thoroughly, and I like doing them perfectly. And I like knowing what I'm doing. I've had to get comfortable in the discomfort. And that is how we grow. If we're not willing to do that, and if it pains us so much that we're frozen, which I've been there many times before, then we're not growing.
I think it's a great Drucker quote that he said, if you show me someone who's not making mistakes, I'll show you somebody who's doing nothing. So
good. Love that. Peter Drucker.
Yeah.
Back from my education days.
Yes.
I think we've had that conversation before too. So let's talk a little bit about the real estate world right now, commercial real estate specifically. What's happening, and how do you guys see yourselves fitting in there?
So it is, it would have been unimaginable to be where we are today 5 years ago. And not to say that it's good or bad or anything, it just is. It's different. And in many ways it's good. In many ways it's, not as good for what we were doing. But there's a lot of change happening. And so the COVID really did two things. One, it showed that we can operate a business without everybody being in the office at all times, yet to be tested on long-term viability of the productivity that comes out of that. But it also, it showed that from a productivity, from a company we can get things done perspective, but it also from a bottom line, if I'm a CFO of a company that has 2 million square feet of real estate, why am I paying all of this money for square footage that I don't need if all my people don't even want to be here and can be as productive? So there's a lot of battle, I'd say, going on between companies and employees, and sort of getting to the bottom of what does a balanced approach to that look like now. But that's where we sit as a value proposition, is the flexibility that a space like Max 6 has. Is you don't have to know the answers to that. Come try something out, see how it works, and we'll change with you as you go. A lot of these, especially A-class buildings, are really struggling right now because they have a 10,000 square foot space that has to be a 10,000 square foot space. And so if a company that was in there before only needs 3,000 based on flexible schedules, they've got to find the company that was in 30,000 square feet of space. And so this downward trend is sort of happening to everybody right now. And I see what we're doing at Max 6 as an example of the way that the real estate market is really going to look in the future, which is what the future of work is probably going to look like.
Flexing.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
When I was in my 20s at Chase first starting out, I remember being in a meeting and somebody said something. They said, the only constant in life is change. And being a young person, you're like, that's pretty stupid and pretty, it's like, but then as you get older, that's all it is change. And the one thing post pandemic is just kind of observing that the companies that have been in here and also the people that you interact with and then reading is that the world's evolving and commercial real estate's evolving, and you can have people that are, entrepreneurship is huge. Working from home is huge. The need for space, but then you also need a place to be able to get together. And the one thing that we're really working on is being flexible, as Kyle was saying, is having these flexible packages and then going back and experimenting with people. And it's more kind of, we're kind of evolving into, what fits you, and how can we help you, and how can you become a member of this community. And one of the big things is the old saying is that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Is going back and listening to people and seeing what their needs are and how we can help them, and then creating the one big thing they always hear here is creating those win-wins.
It's interesting you mentioned that. When we did one of AZ TechCast show, we had with Arizona Technology Council, we had Axon on, who is the taser company, right? Aren't they Axon, something like that.
Something like that.
And I'm thinking about the statement you just made, because the VP that was on with us was saying how they had an incredible amount of very innovative ideas around the technology that they share with the world. And it wasn't until they started listening more to what people needed that they actually started growing financially and being more successful what they offered. Because you can make something all day long, you can create an offer all day long, and if you're not listening to what the people that you're trying to appeal to, what they need, then so what if it's innovative, right? You've got to be listening. And same thing goes with Business Radio X, right? Jesse and I are having those conversations right now as we continue to change and adapt and look for what do our clients need and how do we show up to serve them.
I think just to go back to the very beginning of listening to what people are asking for, and I say this pretty frequently, the most important square foot of space in any of our buildings is the corner of our training room, where it is an open space where anybody can come and talk about anything as long as they're able to be respectful. We've been losing these community gathering places, and regardless of what anybody thinks about religion, it is what it is, and whatever. Less of that means less of the church, means less of these community gathering places. And so I think we've been seeing the result of that over the last couple of decades. And what's happening is people, even more so now, as people are not coming out to even go to work all the time anymore. And so regardless of anything real estate related, and having flexibility in these offices and continuing to listen as the market changes, that was really the first stab at something. Is we need to establish a place as a community gathering place where people can come and talk about ideas and disagree with each other and talk about them in a way that's respectful, but gets to cool, we have a new idea out of this because we could come together.
Yep. Can we talk about some of the groups and organizations that utilize Max 6 for those reasons? So already that comes to mind, right, is Local First Arizona, Conscious Capitalism, the Tempe Chamber, who I may have eaten them all up, but I really want our listeners and viewers to understand what exactly you're talking about. They may, or am I right? They may or may not have a dedicated space here, but you've welcomed everybody. If it fits for them to come and utilize the space, you can make that work for them.
Absolutely. And I'll save another one for Al there, but I will say,
I know the one.
We've yet to have anybody that I just vehemently, personally, couldn't stomach, what they're talking about. I've had people in here talking about they're anti-capitalist, beyond socialist, bordering on anarchist, holding a full meeting about that. It's awesome. How do you stand on 2 feet on anything that you believe without testing it against others that are willing to have that conversation of where the boundaries are on each other's beliefs to find out where there's a common ground? No physical violence here, but anything else goes. And so whether it's the Tempe Chamber or Local First and what they stand for and these great things they're doing in the community, or somebody I definitely disagree with, it's talking about something else, I don't care. Come here and just be respectful and be open to others that have different mindsets. And that's what it's about.
And to your point, that's going away when we look at social media and how our feeds show us only the people that we align with. And then we begin to think, right, we're isolated, and that how you think and how you show up is so different from me, because that's what my narrative, that's what I've been listening to. And what we're saying is, listen, there's still room for disagreement. There's still room for differences. Love that.
One more just before Al says
Yeah.
something about this group that uses our space pretty frequently. Kimber Lanning, who started Local First Arizona, gave one of the most impassioned and eloquent speeches back to in result of this anti-capitalist person. And after they were not combative, but it was, I would have charged into battle with Kimber any day after seeing that. It was such an interesting experience to be so tied into what she was saying emotionally and disconnected emotionally from the other side, but being okay with that and letting those things come together.
And one of the great things about the community is that you're able to go back and talk to the business owners and say, what things do you need right now? And you have the Tempe Chamber, which has all the businesses here in Tempe, a lot of different programs where you can get out in the community. Local First is the same way. When you go out to a Local First event, you're seeing a lot of different business owners. And, as you know, being an entrepreneur, you can't do it alone. And then we have a group upstairs. It's called Alliances, a place where entrepreneurs align. I used to walk by that group every Tuesday. And
I remember.
What is going on in that room?
I remember you did. He was adamant. Talk about adamantly opposed. That was Al.
I was like, what is this? What is this, like a cult?
Now you've been a member for
but 2 years.
Yep.
And I went back, and David Kogan, who's the owner, kept sending me messages, and I was always doing something on Tuesday. And then, post-pandemic, what I went back and really respected for those guys was that they were one of the first groups that did things in person.
Yep.
And I went back and I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. And I've been there for 2 years now, and I've loved every moment of it. And the great thing about that is that you get 20 to 50 people every Tuesday in the Valley who, along with helping you with your business, they help you personally. And there were a lot of people that I did business with. And here at Max 6, what we want to do is we want to go back and be there, but also have in the back of our mind is who's here and how can we connect you with somebody else who's going to help you grow, because we want to help you flourish as a business. And it's really about connections, and it's about understanding what somebody needs. And then as we go around, and part of my thing as a mayor is I go around and I tell Kyle it's shaking hands and kissing babies. You
not
walk
hugging,
around.
Though.
No, not hugging.
Hug.
No hugs. But you go around, you talk, and you say, okay, what are some of the challenges of your business? What are some of the things you're looking for? And then we know people who we can connect you with. And then one thing we're going to work on in the second half of the year is one of our ideas is called the Growth Academy, where we're going to go back and have things to really focus on helping businesses grow. And one of our main focus is going to be there are a lot of groups that focus on the owner, Vistage, I think it's EO is another one.
Yeah.
But as you know, you can only grow as fast as your staff that's underneath you and building those teams. And we have a lot of great information. And that's the thing that we want to kind of do things here for the people that are here with us, but then also different businesses that are out there that want to grow. And so you think about Max 6 as a place to grow and a great community. But also a place where you can go and learn these basic fundamentals that can help you grow your business. And that creates wins-wins for everybody.
Of course it does. And there's so many opportunities for overlap for obviously how we function here at Phoenix Business Radio, Alliances U. That's really what's so nice about being part of this collective, is that we all involve all stakeholders, regardless of who they are. And we're looking for the win. And that's why this is so important to me. So I love being here, and I'm deeply appreciative. You and I first met, I think it was maybe it was Jen Burwell's suggestion when I was at the Regis, my first year owning the studio. I was in the second floor of Regis, not even a mile away.
Yeah.
And no windows and a door. And while they love to take new possible businesses through and show them, yeah, we've got Phoenix Business Radio X here. They couldn't wrap their brain. We had that conversation 5 years ago. They couldn't wrap their brain around why they would want to keep me and offer me a great opportunity to stay there. They just hiked up my rent. And I'm like, Kyle, I want to come see this Max 6 place. We met at Park Lane when you guys had that.
Yeah.
And I said, there's got to be room for me at Max 6. And you're like, I am going to make that happen. And I'm so grateful because you've embraced and you've been an encourager for our growth. So thank you.
Thank you. And shortly after that, I guess, was the first show at your old studio with Drenna from Lyft. And
oh my gosh, that's right.
Just as another interesting, Lyft basically started growing in Arizona in our space, and they're far beyond what we have the capacity.
But they started with Max 6. That's right. They
came in with let's say 9 people and left with about 20 to 30, and I have no idea how many employees they are now, but just the cool connections around that, we're all like a neural network to each other. And but we don't recognize that unless we help each other make those connections. And so I think that's what's been cool about doing this, or even just being awake and open and in the moment in Arizona, is that there's all these cool people around doing amazing things. And so just be open to it.
You'll have to show Jesse, who is our new producer, the big, interconnected web that we have in the storage room. Was it a stakeholder involvement? What was that called, that event? We had it on the table, and it's actually when you opened this co-work space a couple years ago, right before the pandemic. And Kyle is a visual, not only learner, but also a visual teacher. And you had this big, beautiful board that was, the size of this table and bigger. And people could go and they could put their business card or their name on it and say, hey, I learned about Max 6 through so-and-so. And then we took a piece of yarn and connected it to that person. So we could show the interconnectedness and the introductions that anybody had when they came to listen to us speak at that event.
That's how the world works. That's how I view the world. And so as a stand for Max 6, advocating capitalism as a force for good, what does that really mean? Is that poverty is mostly non-financial, but it is a lack of opportunity and relationships. And so the ability of capitalism and business as a force for good is really to make those connections that people either don't have or don't realize they have. And so it was an awesome visual way to show this isn't just everybody coming to Max 6. We're not the sun everything's circling around, but look, everybody's connected to each other. It's a spider web, it's a neural network. This is the real opportunity that we have.
Just one quick story with that. I was just sitting out last night listening, and we have a new person in our space. His name's Ben Cooper. I don't think he's any more than 19. And so he has a business, and he's coming in, and there are, he's a coder. I'm not really that familiar with it, but we have 3 other gentlemen here that do the same thing. And just to sit and listen to the conversations they have with him, and somebody who is, very green, and they went back and they just kind of take him under arm and go back and say something. Here are some things that you should think about. Here's a template that you can use for your first client. And he's sitting back writing. And I went back and I said, here's something that you can't learn sitting at your house.
No.
And so he went back and he said he's so appreciative of the people that are here, because it's the quality of people that you interact with that helps you grow. Because in so many cases, one fun thing we're doing next Wednesday, I'll share a quick story, is we're stunned to hear a lot of people under 30 don't know who the Three Stooges are. So next Thursday we're having a pizza and popcorn event, and we're gonna have some Three Stooges.
Sorry, I can't make it.
Yeah. So anyway,
only because I can't stomach the Three Stooges.
We can stomach,
and I know who they are.
But anyway, yeah,
that's fun. That's a lot of fun. I think I have to come just for that.
But anyway, I watched a show on with Mo Howard, like in the 1970s before he passed away, and he said he was walking into a shop one day, and he ran into his high school classmate, who was a person who had a vaudeville act. And he said, "What are you doing?" And he went back, and that conversation started him on the path to where they were. And it's those it's those personal interactions with somebody that gives you a little bit extra. And that's what we want to do here, is to be those little stepping stones for people to help them get from where they are to where they want to be.
Love that. And to go back to the idea that there's flex space, so that as an individual or an organization ebbs and flows in their growth, hey, we're knocking out of the park. We've got 60 people strong. There's room for them in a Max 6 community. Okay, things are a little lean. We're going to pull down and there's only 9 of us, right? Or that kind of thing. That's why you do what you do. And
I was giving him a hand signal.
codes.
Yes.
I was like, do I need to say something different?
No, sorry.
That's all right. The other piece of that is when we talk about COVID and people working from home and really how are we changing and shifting, when we talk about mental health, and especially for our entrepreneurs, we're a different breed. We think differently. We show up differently. There's a good percentage of entrepreneurs who deal with depression. It's a known fact. We have Andy to thank for some of those stats. That's what shows up in my mind. And if we don't find a community that can support us and we feel aligned to the degree that we want to put ourselves into that community, I don't know that we're going to succeed. I think there's a great rate of failure and feeling different and feeling like we can't succeed. And I'm grateful for putting myself in circles, all the circles we're talking about, that have said, hey, run alongside me. We're competitors, but let's figure out how to help each other succeed.
I think the hand signal, see if I pick up what Al was putting down, is we've got 3 uniques. One of those we've talked about is the flexibility. The other 2 are community and growth. Mm-hmm. And so to your point, if I'm Ben and I'm going to be dealing with all this learning curve, getting into business and not just doing what I know, my technical specificities for coding, how do I begin to do this without it costing 3 times as much, without me driving myself insane, running my head through a wall, trying to figure it all out myself? Come to a place like this and develop relationships. And it's so much easier, not only so much easier, but so much more rewarding because you've got these relationships in your life. The growth, I mean, it means different things to different people, different companies. I don't care what it means. I just care that somebody wants to continue to grow, at least their learning, mm-hmm. and what they're able to do with that to help others. And so whatever that means, I mean, that's the Growth Academy. That's what we do here. That's why we make these connections. And the flexibility is just by nature how we do that at Max 6. We're like an insurance policy for whatever happens externally, so you don't have to worry about your real estate. We've got you. And to your point, from Andy Maurer or Brian Moore or any of these Gallup statistics that are showing mm-hmm. 80% of employees now are either disengaged or actively disengaged within companies that they're measuring.
Right.
That is not only absolutely ludicrous from how many billions of dollars of just operating costs are being wasted by people that don't want to be doing what they're doing, but these are people that are like suicide rate, drugs, alcoholism, all these things that are happening that because people are not fulfilled with what they're doing in their lives. Forget calling it a job. Like, why do they even wake up in the morning? At some point it becomes like functionally just to get the mail and show up to get more money, to get more food and stuff, so that I wake up the next morning to do it all over again. Like, what is the purpose in all of that? And so when you start asking yourself that question, if you don't have it, you're lost.
Yep.
So that is that is a huge goal of what I want to have change in Max 6, is that work change.
Mm-hmm.
And take like your personal experience here about how there was a certain someone who sat in a desk right out in front of your office in a job she probably didn't like that much.
Who's listening right now.
Yes.
And part of my team, and came to maybe host the show if I needed her to.
Yes, that's right. And so she's sitting out there one day, and think of the different trajectory of her life per se, but for not meeting you and the different things that happen. And that's what happens when you get people together, is that you might not have that interest, but they might know somebody who does. And that's the other thing with community. It's how people touch each other and about how you're able to to grow in a different way by the people that you interact with. And that's the big thing about community, is getting people together, because you might be 2/3 of the ingredients you need, and you get somebody else.
Kendra Maples is who we're speaking to, and I want to make sure we give her a shout out. Culture Crush Business. At the time, she was working for a different organization, and she was like Al and Kyle, somebody who helped me when I needed it. I was, again, doing everything in the beginning, taking photos, doing production, hosting shows, and she would come in and open up the door and say, I think you might need some help taking photos. And I'd be like, yes, that would be great. And then I had to take a personal leave for longer than I thought, almost 2 years. And Kendra called because she had just made a change in her career. And she said, I love what you're doing, and I want to help you keep it going. How can I help? And with very little training, I taught her how to do the production, host shows. She kept everything running for me single-handedly, with the exception of a couple VAs. And I got to step away and heal and take time to take care of my family. And then when I came back, thank you so much for mentioning Kendra, because it's such an important example, again, of who we are here and how we take care of each other. When I was ready to come back, she was still looking for work and getting more serious about it, because I was back, and also not happy with the way that her career was running. And she wanted to begin to be an advocate for cultures that really are who they say they are, not just they've got the foosball table and snacks on the counter and this, great whatever movie night. No offense to your upcoming movie night.
It's going to be a good one.
It's going to be good. But when those are the only things, that's not culture, right? That's a great wreath on the door. And when you come in an interview, it's like, oh, this is kind of neat. Everybody comes together. What she found is when she worked for different organizations, that all looked and sounded good, but on the daily, they were lacking integrity. They were lacking communion. They were lacking opportunities to grow and aspire and feel connected to the mission and purpose of the business that she was working for. And so, to Al's point, we sat down and I said, well, I think you ought to start a podcast on culture. And now that podcast is still running 3 years later, I think 3 years. Maybe she'll come and give me a different sign in front of the window since she's here. And now it's a business, full-fledged business. In fact, we've got a great community event coming up in July that I'll be speaking at and we're sponsoring, and it will be at Arizona Wilderness at their Gilbert location. Do you know that about this?
I do.
Yeah. And it's going to be all around inclusion and diversity and really just community and all that. Brian Moore, you already gave a shout out to Brian. He'll be there because he will be hosting the next quarter event, and we're doing something with Anthem. So again, up there she is giving me a thumbs up. Thanks, baby. Love it. So thank you, because I think that's a great example. I have one more example, and then I want to make sure that we hit some of the high notes that you'd asked me to. So Darby Vance with Full Swing Studio used to be right across from here.
Yep.
And at the time was video production only and photography. And so I hired him for a personal job that I needed, and didn't know him. I think we had met maybe once or twice, and we got to know each other. He came and saw our soundboard. He talked to Daryl and he got excited. And he came to me when they were getting ready to go to their new location in partnership with One Community, and said, I want to thank you because you've been a great example for me in podcasting. We're now going to offer that as part of our services. Now, most business owners would go, ouch, like, I don't want to give any of my secrets away, and you can't talk to my production guy and, that kind of thing. And I'm like, whatever you need, buddy. I'm excited for you. And likewise, we're doing video, and that wasn't always in our wheelhouse. But when we look at it through the lens of there's enough business for all of us, then we can all win. So
absolutely
love it. Let's talk about how full the parking lot is, because again, COVID days, it was pretty bleak. Al and I could cross over 6 different parking spaces and no one cared because
I didn't have a parking space. I was walked.
You were
I just walked across the street.
Even then, even during COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how and why is it full, and who's here?
Well, go ahead, Kyle. You'll talk about the old co-working space.
Yeah.
So there's been lots of changes, and for anybody listening, we still have plenty of parking. We really got into a kind of scary place during COVID, and it was semi-COVID related, but there were also other issues going around the neighborhood with just, hey, we're a thoroughfare where a lot of people are coming through all the time, and so just whether it was people that didn't have a place to live or were using different substances in ways that were disruptive to what we were doing, it caused a lot of issues to where the building across the parking lot from us that we own got down to 26% occupancy. from a cash flow perspective, that's a holy shit moment. I mean, that's like, what is, can we stay in business tomorrow? Not like, what does our year end goal look like? And we have solved a lot of those issues largely by getting even more involved with the community in various ways around us. And luckily, I mean, thankfully, I guess, COVID is not a thing anymore. At least
memory.
it's not a disruptive force. But to one of the first questions you asked, the work environment changed, and a lot of people need what we have right now and want what we have right now. And so, as an example, the initial co-working space that we built out in 2012, that was that's my baby up there, and we had been running Max 6 out of there, managing the buildings, but really that was Max 6 as his 10,000 square feet of space. We built out this bottom floor that we're in right now, 2018, as a addition to it, and ended up finding a really cool company, Moxie Pest Control, that is occupying basically 2/3 of the entire floor upstairs now. They are our largest co-working, in quotes, tenant, and they're kind of private occupancy. They're kind of their own thing, but they moved here partially because they wanted to be a part of all of this, not just on their own. And they're really set up to thrive. I mean, if you go in there, and it's two things, kind of a headquarters for the company as well as call center. It's not an environment that you would expect if you just heard the words call center. People want to be there. People like being there. They love coming in here. And it's been awesome to have 100 people that, we see. The joke I always have is I decide how happy I'm going to be in the morning by how full the parking lot is, because really that's just a metric that represents, like, look at all these people we can surround ourselves with. And that's an example. We've got all kinds of cool companies that have moved in that are a part of this, that have stuck with us over the time. And it's more of what I've always wanted it to be, which is this thriving environment, as opposed to just businesses that need space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we have like a company that moved in from San Francisco, Hiry, that does hiring with an app. We have Tiger Mountain, which is a nonprofit that has our gorgeous community garden out there. We have multiple, as Kyle said, like 80 different ones. So we have Business RadioX too, which is our crown jewel. So,
yes, of course.
Yes.
Thanks, Al, for that bone. It's so fun to watch Max 6 grow and evolve, and we've, all three of us together and separately, have had so many different conversations around I don't know what I'm doing, but here we go. Let's give it a try. I can see it, I can visualize it, and now I just need to put the pieces in place and make it happen. So that's very helpful for me as a business owner, an entrepreneur, to run alongside people who can offer ideas and help me get to the next level of where I need to go. What else do you want our listeners to know?
The big thing now that we're focused on is an initiative that we have. It's called Flawless Execution. That we want to kind of have, and Kyle's going to talk about this, is that it's a white glove, blue collar experience that he thought up of, and he'll kind of share that is. But we want, when people are here, that they get that white glove experience.
Mm-hmm.
And, so it's like, we want to, one thing I always say to Kyle is that we must be clothed with competence. And that's one thing that I'm brought in to do, to make sure that when we do things well. And as all companies, we have some errors on the board, but the main thing is to be able to fix that and make things better. And so when people come in, they know that first and foremost that we care about the people that are here, and that we jump on things immediately and get things solved. And, that's one thing that we're really focused on. So when you come in here, you're always happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always kind of felt too, from a business standpoint, is when it comes time to renew your lease and you're happy,
you're staying.
You're going to stay. And so Kyle, go back and share a little bit more about the white glove, blue collar thought.
I've heard you guys refer to it a couple times, so I'm glad it's a thing.
It's going to be coming up more often.
Yeah.
So we had called this a number of things: the flawless execution, clothed in competence. Al asked me a number of months ago a really good question, which is, how do you know that you're done and you've had a successful week at the end of the week? And my answer at the time was, I don't. Because I'm always gauging that by asking that question at the end of the week, as opposed to what are we doing in the start of the week that we can say will be successful at the end. And so what does it look like to have a structured approach to this? And the way I've described it to our team in the past is, I love all you guys because you have the willingness to paddle a canoe on wheels through the desert. But if we can get this thing in the water at some point, imagine how fast we can go. So brute strength has got us here, and Al and the owl-like mentality is going to take us where we need to go. The white glove, blue collar thing popped into my head probably a little bit after we sold the manufacturing space, and just I've been really thinking a lot more about this blue collar and what that means. And it, I think, to many people means you've got oil on your hands and you're, dirty knees, and you're working on physical stuff. But to me, it's a mentality, which is really just a pragmatism, a realism, a connection with what is, as opposed to this sort of politicians, others that live in this world that's so ethereal to us all sometimes, that it's like, how does this relate to me? It doesn't. And so it's really that mentality of people, whether it's actually what you would consider necessarily a blue collar job or not, is that people that want to connect action with intention and actually make some stuff happen. Let's make cool stuff happen. Let's build cool stuff. Let's do stuff for other people. Let's make it happen. And the white glove experience for those people, especially because they have that mentality and are working their asses off so hard, deserve more than anybody that could even pay just for that white collar experience, a white collar experience. We need to be honoring the entrepreneurs in our community, whether that's from a federal, state, private, business, individual perspective, because those are the people who are making our lives better. And so that's what we need to show up and people need to experience when they come to Max 6, because they deserve it. That's what they're working for. We need to show up and give that to them. And we are falling down in certain instances where we're not providing that experience right now. But I'm open to that, because we're not going to get there unless we put gloves on and get them as dirty as they need to get, until we can put the white gloves on and there's no more dust left on the top of the door to check anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I'm going to quote my college professor and mentor, Scott Romeo, where he goes back and he asks the question. He says, are you a best value, high cost, or low cost provider? And you go back and you think about that. And, at Max 6, we're not going to be the high end pretty place. You go back and a lot of fluff and things like that, but we're very, we're best value, and we're going to add that white glove experience for you. And so it's, the one thing about running a business, it's a very serious affair, because it's your life. And a lot of people, I work in the corporate world, and I go back and I talk to some of my corporate friends, and, the one big difference between the corporate world and the entrepreneur world is fear.
Yeah.
Like Todd has said before, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, they may walk in and say, hey, we're doing a layoff. That there's that potential fear there. But as a business owner, you got the money coming to pay your bills. And the one thing we want to do here is to make sure that we're not charging an exorbitant cost, but we also got to stay in business. Mm-hmm. But also, while we're here, you get value. And that's one of the big things, is that with this is that, you should, speaking of corporate, I was talking to one of my corporate friends, one of my peers that I work with. He called me when I put my announcement out on LinkedIn. He reached out and said, let's talk. And I said, Dino, these people here don't know this side of me. Kyle's seen a little bit of it. A little bit of it.
What side? I'm intrigued. What side are we talking about, Al? The hugging side?
Not a hugging side.
Yeah.
I'm a very intense person.
I know that.
When it comes, especially when it comes to getting things done in the right way. And if things aren't right, I'm going to work hard to make sure that it's done right. And so, especially when it comes to people, because the people here matter. And so when you put a request, so we go and tell you to put a request in, we're going to get the request. We're going to make sure that it's done, and it's done in a proper way, and that you'll be communicated with.
I've seen it every time that I've needed you for something.
Yeah. And so the big thing is that you just get that feedback, and, because the people, I always tell Kyle, it's like, people write the check, and that's the revenue, because that's the way the world goes. And that's one thing I like about Alliance, is that you can't do things on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And, back to what you were saying before about the conversation we had before about being anti-capitalist is that that's the reason why most of those things fail, because, they're great in theory, but they don't work in practice. And like, so many people that you see out here, pour in their life's effort into this stuff. And that's where we want to be here, to be able to help them, but not hinder them.
Yep.
And so that's one thing we're really working on.
Another shout out to Local First Arizona, who has their own building
Mm-hmm.
in downtown Phoenix, and they have a collective workspace out here. Thomas Barr, a couple of days ago, they do their show, Arizona Good Business, with us on occasion. We've been partners for, I think, 3 years, and he reached out a couple of weeks ago and knows that I'm going through a transition right now with the business. And he's like, listen, I want to sit down with a couple of our board members and let's talk. I think I have some ideas on how we can work together. And I didn't realize that the bulk of the conversation was Local First saying to me, how can we help you? Now, I'm all about reciprocation, and so are they. And it was just another example of how we all work together. They know that I'm in growth mode and I need some help. And I'm not sure how to answer some of the questions that I'm being faced with. And they also know that they could better utilize me as a legacy partner and help tell the stories of their members who have succeeded through the help of Local First and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So again, just another great example of how we are in just the greatest community here at Max 6.
100%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any more examples? I know we've given plenty, but is there anybody we haven't given a shout out to that you guys can think of, a past Max 6 community member or someone who's currently with us? I know I'm kind of throwing that on the spot, but is there anybody else that we haven't?
I think one thing is a former employee that used to work here at
Yes,
Max
of
6 is that
course.
we'll throw
Your
a little thing
walking
out there.
buddy.
We'll throw out the Chrissy Jackson, because
Whoop, whoop.
I mean, one of the things when I go back and I do this, I used to sit back and watch her, and I always go back and in my mind I go back, it's WWCD. What would Chrissy do? And so in a lot of cases, she went out and she really she really worked out and really hustled, and she kind of set an example for what a community manager should be. So we could go back and we'll emulate her in a lot of ways. So hopefully she'll listen to this.
Well, I'll make sure she does.
Yes.
My paddleboarding buddy, but let's talk about her growth trajectory professionally, because she was ready for something different and hated to leave Max 6. Had she been with you for 10 years?
It
Not
had
quite.
been
I think 6.
5 or 6.
I'm
yes,
thinking of
yes,
Jen
yeah,
Burwell, who
yeah,
also had wings and grew.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And Chrissy went ahead and now is, and I'm forgetting the name of the company, but a similar Portal, right?
Yep.
And the first place for Portal land here in Arizona, and they chose Chrissy to fill that building and bring clientele, and she's done a phenomenal job for them.
Well, let me go back and I'll throw 3 others out there. We will call it the gym corridor downstairs.
Yeah.
We have 3 companies down there.
Yeah.
Resound, Lee Media, and
Mind Body.
Point in time.
Point in Time.
And
Point in
Mind
Time.
Body, yeah.
Yep. And Point in Time, that started upstairs in co-working and are now in suites because they grew out of it.
And serve very similar.
Yes.
I mean, they're in the similar industry.
It's actually that whole floor, other than
The gym?
the IT,
The American Commercial Cleaning too.
American
Christian.
Commercial Cleaning. So I mean, it's a perfect example of how people have used the space. I started with 3. I only needed desks. I don't know how big I'm going to be in 6 months, let alone 3 years. That's what people are offering me for leases. And then they grew into their own space when they were ready. But you're right. Like, there are 3 companies down there that should theoretically be in direct competition with each other in some instances. And instead of that, the thing I kept thinking about when you were talking about this concept earlier about, like, it's not about competition, it's about we all can thrive, is this approach, like Elon Musk open sourced all of his patents. The world needs to have these so that there can be enough competition for me to also succeed. And that has been the behavior of everybody that I've seen. But those three companies are a perfect example that do some version of what each other does and also help each other out. How do you do this? You're doing this. How would I get into this? How do I not have to spend the frustration, if nothing else, of figuring out how this works on my own? And they're doing some incredible things between the three of them, both like incredible just objectively on their own, and especially compared to where they started. And we got to see that growth. And I mean, the thing I really care about is you're talking about Mike Jones and Rami Kalla and James Lee and the three, like, and their employees and just all these individuals that, as the companies grow, when we say businesses and people thrive, like that's what I really care about. What do the people thriving part look like? And if nothing else, they've gone a hell of a ride and it's just learned so much, but I see them experiencing the world differently. And I mean, that whole floor is just such a good example.
And one more thing, I'd like to throw a shout out to Ben Johnson.
Yes.
Who's out on the floor, and he's really an instrumental part of the community with our tech and things like that. Because the one thing from a personal growth standpoint was that Ben had a job early on where he was on call most of the time. And when he wasn't on call, he spent a lot of time chatting around with people. And then once he kind of moved on from that and started his own company, you can really tell a difference when he's locked in and focused in. But he does a lot of great work helping us with technology, especially with the VIP room that we have upstairs that we're going to look to kind of market and grow more, where you can have a virtual in-person event where you can have people online. And we're looking at different ways that we can help companies utilize that space. And so it's and then to do a shout out to Scott Marsh.
I was just going to do
our
that.
Personal trainer. He's on vacation this week, but he brings in a lot of different people, helps people in the space, and
myself included.
Yes.
I've got biceps because of Scott.
And I have my my stable of wrestlers and the wrestling names. So anyway, we have some fun with that. But no, it's a lot of fun, and the main thing that I know. Over the course of the 5 years, like you see, SciTech's been here the whole time with us. Back to Lee Media, Structure Properties, a company out of San Francisco that does commercial real estate. They're right outside. And so there's a ton of people. Manpower.
I mean, we've got names that have been here over the years. It's wild to think about.
Driving Independence.
I mean, Uber started here in Arizona. They grew to 27 people and they had to leave. And I have no idea how many.
Lyft and Uber. Look at you, Max.
Lyft came in right after.
I love it. Incredible.
I mean, but it doesn't matter if they've got a recognizable name or not. It's just, people would know those names. But Jake and EXP Trips that was here for years. Like you may not have ever heard of EXP Trips or Jake. Just as cool of a story and a guy and what they were doing.
And he knows that he's got family here. I sometimes hesitate to use the word family when we talk about businesses. Max 6 really is a community, and it's like family. Because if I ever leave from here, which I won't, but if I did, I know you guys are not going anywhere. Certainly Al, because he's my hugging buddy.
Yes.
On that note, we're going to close out this segment.
Okay.
So I can go hug Al and have him squirm out of my arms.
Al, why are you moving towards the door?
And Al's
5, 4, 3. Where's that closing video? Let me get out the closing music. Let me get out of here.
Right. Oh my goodness. How do our listeners and viewers get in touch and find out more about how to utilize a community space, and if they're looking for an opportunity and to align with what you're doing?
We're on social media and all that, but really the easiest way is mac6.com, MAC6.com. We've got lots of information about the spaces and community and what's going on around here, and get a hold of us. Kyle.McIntosh@mac6.com if you want to connect with me personally.
Does your email for Max 6 say the mayor at Max 6? It should.
It's al.loveland@max6.com.
Boring.
I know. Well, we could put a new one out
we
there.
need the mayor mayor at max6.com. Al Loveland, is it al.loveland? I'm sorry.
Al.loveland, yes.
At max6.
Mac6.com.
MAC6.com.
Yes.
Yeah. really fun to be with you guys again. And I'm personally excited that Jesse got to produce his first show today. Whoop whoop.
Yes.
And get to hear, right, this whole collective conversation, because Daryl and I have been, and Kendra for that matter, have been trying to kind of paint that picture. Who better than to hear the Mac 6 story from both of you? So thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
You've been listening to not Mac 6. Well, you have. You've been listening to Mac 6. You've been listening to Phoenix Business Radio right here at Mac 6 Entrepreneurial Center in Tempe, Arizona. Some media leans left, some lean right, and we lean business. Until next time, I'm Karen Nowicki. Thanks for listening.